What's up, exiles, and welcome back. Today, I want to go over the Development Manifesto from August 2nd. I know I'm a little bit behind. I had COVID really bad for a couple of days there, and I had this video set up and ready to go. Wasn't able to sit down and finish it. Today, I'm able to talk a little bit more, and was able to get up out of bed, so we'll get this video out to y'all today. I'm gonna go over just what was in the Development Manifesto, none of the new uniques or div cards yet. That'll be in a different video, hopefully posted tomorrow. This is just going over how it's going to affect the player base. I'm not going to go too in-depth on any of them. There's a lot more math than I'm going to go over today. This is more of a what it is. Was it a buff? Was it a nerf? Was it a rework? For what type? Was it a defense buff? Was it a skill gem buff? And how does it feel? Like, how is that going to feel playing in it in 3.19? Alright, let's get at it. Alright. So the first change was moving spell suppression, moving the majority of the power of spell suppression from your gear onto the tree. So this is a rework. They're adjusting power. It's not directly a nerf. It's not directly a buff. They're adjusting the power from your gear to the tree. For most builds that aren't on the right side of the tree, this is a nerf. It will feel like a nerf. This is a defensive rework based on spell suppression. It's going to feel bad for most players. If you were like, oh, I just took a bunch of spell suppression on gear and got 95%, you won't be able to do that anymore. The previous max on your gear was 100%, which, that's it. That's all of it. You're done. And you could roll up to 12% with the Eldritch modifiers. I believe that's Eater. That's elevated. Get that up to 12. So a potential maximum of 112% just from your gear. That was before. The new max on gear is 66. So they took off 34%. That's pretty heavy. You can still get 10% Eldritch. That's the elevated now is 10% instead of 12. The tree notables added 22% spell suppression. So if you want to invest in the notables, you can still hit cap without too much trouble. But now you have to invest in the tree and your gear to hit 100. For Arctic Armor, technically it's a buff, a defensive self buff. It's gonna feel meaningless because who runs Arctic Armor? Arctic Armor, for those of you who don't know, only applies its physical damage and fire damage reduction while you're stationary. So you have to reserve the mana 100% of the time, but you only benefit from the buff when you're standing still. It was a sizable buff going from 13% to 21% phys damage reduction from hits and 12% up to 20% fire damage reduction from hits. I believe it's less fire damage taken from hits. But it's still while stationary, so it's still trash. In a game where you have to constantly run, dip, duck, dive, dodge, and get out of there, while stationary is not strong. We have the Flesh and Stone buff, a defensive self buff, again, kind of meaningless. If you were using Flesh and Stone before, you got a little bit more phys damage reduction. It went from 11% to 15%. That's the equivalent of one endurance charge. So if you were using Flesh and Stone before, now you get about one endurance charge more survivability. So yeah, it's a buff, barely. Defiance Banner got a big nerf. As a defensive aura, it is going to feel bad using Defiance Banner now. Previously, at max level, you were 49% increased evasion and armor rating. Now that's cut down to 24% increased armor and evasion rating. We did gain reduced, enemies have reduced crit chance. So for those of you who never read Defiance Banner past, it gives you armor and evasion. It also debuffs enemies nearby, giving them a reduced crit chance. Now it is going up to 40% reduced crit chance for nearby enemies. It does not make up for it at all. It's just cool, whatever, it's there. When I was going through the math for Defiance Banner, I realized that you're only losing about 1 armor and or 1 evasion notable. If you were only stacking armor and didn't have any evasion anywhere, you lost 1 armor notable. So that's about 2 points on the tree, which sucks. But for 10%, it's still a fine banner. People are still going to use it. Next, Wind Dancer got a rework. Wind Dancer does a defensive notable. I have to explain that because who the fuck took Wind Dancer? So they changed it. Instead of it giving you more evasion chance, instead of giving you more evasion, it now gives you 10% more chance to evade. So instead of increasing your base evasion rating by a certain amount, it now increases your chance to evade. So if you were really high evasion, but not able to push that 95% evasion cap, this is actually pretty good. But if you were at like, even, I need to do the math again, but I believe it's if you were at like 60%, it's not as much of a buff. We'll have to see. I need to do some more path of building. Maybe somebody's already run the numbers, but I don't think this is going to be like a breakout. Everyone's going to take it notable now. It is a buff to evasion, which is a very weak defensive layer. So that's good. But I feel like we're going to get a lot of who cares feelings out of that change. So next we have Arrow Dancing. Also a defensive notable rework based on evasion. The way this one works now is evasion is doubled against projectile attacks, and you get 25% less evasion against melee attacks. If your evasion was low, like if you were just running some evasion, right? Like if you just threw on Grace and didn't care about anything else, this is good. If you're next to it, you can grab it. But if you already are at, if you're pushing that 95% cap, you don't need extra evasion against projectiles, you're just losing evasion against melee. So you have to find out where you land on that spectrum. I think for the people who didn't care about stacking evasion, they're not going to care. And the people who did care about stacking evasion are going to be pushing the upper limits where this is more of a nerf than a buff. If you're in that little sweet spot, awesome. So now here we had something that surprised me very much. The ward change was actually a buff, and a sizable buff at that. The way they buffed it was to set the ward regen duration down from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, and they added 58% increased faster restoration of ward. Now, they were not super specific. They said they added that to items. I'm not sure if that's 58% per item. Like the max roll you can get tier 1 is 58% faster restoration of ward. Or if that's 58% if you get tier 1 on everything. I believe it's on each item, as the unique helmet that gives you faster restoration of ward, is now 60%. So, it's a little bit higher than a tier 1 roll. That makes sense. Going off of that, you get 174% increased restoration of ward, faster restoration of ward. That means your ward is going to restore in 1.5 seconds. So if you have a little like health pool of ward, 3k, 4k, whatever you get up to, and that's resetting every 1.5 seconds, that's pretty nice. Especially if you have some other form of damage stoppage, such as block or evasion. Like if you have a very high evasion chance, a very high block chance, and ward resetting every 1.5 seconds, you know, you're gonna evade 90% of hits plus entropy, so whatever, and then you're gonna block 75% of those hits. Whatever gets through, boom, slaps against your ward. Your ward has 1.5 seconds to reset, so all you have to do is not die with your evasion and your block chance for 1.5 seconds to get your ward back up. I think you're going to see some very, very tanky builds utilizing maximum increased restoration of ward. I'm definitely going to be looking into it, seeing if I can make something a little funky. Next, the Grasping Mail 100% increased global defenses. Got. An item affix, defense based, heavy nerf. It's gonna feel bad for those people who are using it, but I feel like people were blowing this out of proportion simply because in 3.19, if you're playing in League, there's no way to get that off the Grasping Mail onto your Vol Regalia. There's no recombinators. So it's a lot less powerful of a node stuck on a Grasping Mail. Plus, most players never even got it. You know, it was anywhere from 9 to 20x just for the mod before the item was crafted. So the majority of players won't even notice that it's gone. Gravicius body mod nerf, and by nerf it was removed. So the Gravicius mod gave you 14% of your life as extra ES. If you had 4,000 health, 4,000 life rather, that's 560 flat ES. That is so much that is now gone. In my opinion, they should have brought the number down a little bit or put a cap on it or something. Removing it sucks. It was very nice for players who wanted to invest in the hybrid build type, but I understand it was giving too much free ES to the players who were not investing in Energy Shield. So it feels bad. I understand why they did it. I don't agree with it, but I understand. Blind got a buff. Blind is a defensive layer ish. You can get more blind effect now. So if you weren't hitting your evasion cap, like if you were just running around with Grace, Determination, Defiance Banner, and that was your only sources of evasion, then, you know, blind really helps if you can blind the enemy, and now it's a little bit stronger. That's kind of cool. Overall, it looks like we're seeing a lot of buffs to evasion and attack evading style defenses, and a nerf to everything else. And next we have Mind Over Matter, which is technically a rework, but is going to feel like a buff for the majority of players. So what they did was they moved the 10% that you would get on a chest from Shaper's mod or from the Cloak of Defiance and just put it on the keystone. So now by default, the keystone is 40% damage taken from Mana Before Life. It's just adding a lot of flexibility. It adds some flexibility to mana defense builds. I hope we see more love for mana defense builds. Neat. That really is my only answer, my only response. That's neat. I don't think it's enough for mana to become meta, but it's good for those few players who are using it. Lastly, for this section, we have the buff to fortification, the defensive mechanic Fortify. All they did was make it easier to achieve and sustain your 20 stacks of fortification. Next, we're going to get into minions. I didn't include it here, but they also did an entire overarching debuff to minions. A big ass nerf, just slapped them in the face. At level 20, across the board, minions lost about 20% life and lost about 20% damage. So we're going to see a lot of green here on these minion gems. A lot of buffs to the minion skills. But this is just bringing them back, mostly just bringing them back up to where they were. The other thing I didn't include on here is that they removed the hidden modifiers to minion damage for poison, bleed, and ignite. Previously, minions did a lot less poison, bleed, and ignite damage. Now they will be doing full poison, bleed, and ignite damage. I believe minions were doing half poison damage, 1/7 bleed damage, and 1/4 ignite damage. And now that's all getting buffed up to full. Very, very good for if you want to run dot builds on your minions. I think we're going to see a very, very large rise in dot builds, minion dot builds. So keep an eye out for that. Firstly, they added some new base types for minions specifically, similar to the Convoking wand that can roll minion modifiers wand. They added 2 new tiers of wand below it so you can get it earlier. They added bone rings, and they changed the bone spirit shield over to a minion base type. I included it later here, but I'll touch it really quickly. In Necromancer, they removed the +2 all to minions, and they added it to helmets. So now helmets, instead of rolling +3 local, they roll +2 global. That's pretty strong. Necromancer is not a Necromancer anymore, I guess. We'll see how that goes. It's just interesting that the build that was designed for summoning was too strong at summoning, so they gave everyone else good summoning. It's weird. It's weird. Absolution got a buff. Lost about 5% base damage, but they added 5% crit and added 80% effectiveness of added damage. That's pretty big. So if you were adding about 100 flat damage before, you won't notice a damage loss from the 5% less base damage. It gets funky with increase and everything, but if you were stacking a lot of added, or even a medium amount of added, you'll be doing more damage with Absolution. Not including the 20% nerf to base. I'm not going to include that. The wipe. The across the board nerfed minions. We're just talking about the gym changes itself. Animate Guardian got a buff. It now does more base damage. Who cares? Who was doing damage with their Animate Guardian? Don't do that. Animate Weapon got a nerf. They increased the mana cost. And that's it. Arakali's Fang got a nerf. Sort of. The poison duration was halved. But previously, Arakali's Fang had an 8-second base poison duration, which is double. Normal poison duration is 4. Arakali's Fang had that inherent 8-second poison damage duration. It was reduced back down to 4 default, but when you include the fact that now minion poison is going to be doing double the damage it was, you're doing the same amount of damage you were doing, but instead of doing it in 8 seconds, you're doing it in 4 seconds. So you're going to be doing faster damage It'll take you 4 seconds to get full ramp instead of 8. That's kind of a buff. However, they also removed the fizz as extra chaos you get from Arakali's Fang, and that is going to result in a pretty sizable chunk of lost DPS. However, they added that back to Necromancer as Unholy Might. So maybe Arakali's Fang overall got a slight buff. It's so hard to tell. I think for the majority of players, it's going to feel kind of shitty. But for those players who can afford the end game GG gear, you're going to be sitting pretty. You're going to be doing just fine. Herald of Agony got a buff in that every stack of Virulence now gives an additional 1% attack speed. That's a base increase of 40% increased attack speed plus 5% increased attack speed for every cluster you had. I gave PoE Ninja a quick glance. Some people had 8, 9, 10 of these. So they're running 10 times 5. That's an additional 50. So they're going to be running an additional 90% increased attack speed next league as opposed to this league. That is a lot of attack speed, in addition to the fact that now you're going to be doing double the poison damage as before. Herald of Agony is something to definitely look out for. I might even build up an Arakali's Fang Herald of Agony because that sounds like fun. That's a lot of attack speed, a lot of poison damage. I haven't seen anything posted about it anywhere. Maybe I missed it, but I think that's low-key going to be a huge sleeper build. I'm going to try it out. Hope it works. Now, we'll real quickly blow through the rest of these. Herald of Purity buff does 15% more damage. Crusader Slam got a cooldown reduction, so it hits faster. And it's a little bit bigger slam AoE. Cool. Summon Phantasm got a buff. 20% more damage and higher chance to resummon when hitting a unique. So you'll have better uptime on bosses. Cool. Raise Zombie costs less mana. Awesome. Carrion Golem, change the life numbers around. It should result in higher life, except for the fact that we lost 20% life overall on the whole board. We lost 20% minion life. The golem life balance should be net positive for all golems, but it also depends on how hard they nerfed their life base. Chaos Golem Cascade got a little bit of a buff, a little bit more increased effective added damage, a little bit faster cooldown, add some crit chance, some more increased AoE, and Chaos Storm does more damage. If you were using Chaos Golem for damage, small buff. Flame Golem. The mortar now targets close by enemies. Increased effective added 100%. That's a lot. It went from 100 to 200. That's sizable. Incinerate now from 20 to 80% effective added. The cone does 30% more damage. Well, it goes from 100 to 200% increased effective added and lost some crit. So Flame Golem going to be doing a lot more damage. You want to try out Flame Golem again if you were a Golemancer. Run around with 30 Flame Golems. Might work better. Ice Golem, Ice Beard has more effective added. Okay. Lightning Golem, base crit went up. Lightning Spell got some more effective added. Okay. Stone Golem just got a life rebalance. Okay. Summon Holy Relic got a sizable buff. It went from 146 up to 250% increased effective added damage. That's noticeable. And 50% more life regen across the board. If you were using Holy Relic before, awesome, it's going to be stronger. I know it was fine before. It's interesting that they chose to buff it, as I believe there are other skills that are more underperforming. But, okay, we'll take it. Holy Relic buff. SRS, Summon Raging Spirit, got a buff. It got a sizable buff. The damage multiplier went from 15% less to 38% more. That is a very sizable damage buff. It costs more mana. That sucks. And the Helm enchants got small buffs to chance to summon more. Kinda nice. Popcorn SRS looks back on the menu. Maybe we'll be able to get a real SRS build, as in using the Raging Spirits for damage themselves. I don't know if the buff was enough for that. We'll have to see. But Popcorn looks popcorny. Reaper got a rework. It lost 40% increased damage, but gained 20% attack speed. It also gained 30% AoE. It lost effective added damage on its dash from 250 down to 150. I haven't played with Reaper, so I don't know exactly how that's going to feel. You're gaining attack speed, which is always good, but the dash got nerfed and you lost some base damage. We'll see. Skeletons got slapped in the face. Summon Skeletons got a big nerf. Now the mages do 25% less damage, and all skeleton types lost the 50% more added. That sucks, but also Skelly mages are still going to go crazy, so go ham. Actually, I don't know, because 25% less plus the 20% nerf across the board. Maybe Skelly mages got nerfed hard. Summon Skeletons are going to suffer from this problem where the GGG makes by nerfing skills just enough that when you can't invest in them, they suck. So Summon Skeletons was a very popular new build and starter build recently because most of your power was on the tree. So you didn't have to have great gear to be able to start progressing in the end game, right? You can get up to red maps with Skelly mages with very, very little gear investment, which is great for people who struggle to farm, people who are new, casual players. You know, you can't play every day, you can't build up a lot of currency. Oh, Skelly mages, a little bit of currency, you're good to go. Now, that's not going to be like that. If you can't invest, it's going to feel terrible. But if you're an Uber farmer, if you're making all the currency in the game, you can still play Skelly mages. You're still going to delete everything instantly. You're not going to feel this. Maybe a little bit. But it hurts the lower casual players a lot more than it hurts the hardcore farmers. That's my take on that. Varana's March Arbalist got a buff. Not gonna lie, I didn't know this minion existed. They fixed a bug apparently where it was doing like no damage. They also added 50% more damage, and they buffed the support mods that come built into the boots. So the way the boots work is the boots give you the minion, the Arbalist, and then it rolls random support mods for that Arbalist. They buffed those random supports that it rolls. They gave it more damage. They fixed its accuracy so it won't miss 70% of the time. Maybe it's usable. I don't know. I've never heard of someone using it because it was broken. Minion dot changes. We touched on this before. Minions are now doing double poison damage, 3.5 times ignite, and 7 times bleed. Unless I'm missing something huge, poison minions gonna be doing a lot of damage. Summon Skeletons, fizz based summon Skeletons, don't use brutality now but use poison. Stack up 8 billion poisons on the boss real quick. It dies like that. Gonna be kind of nice. They also nerfed minion charges. Endurance charge, frenzy charge, power charges for minions now apply the same buffs as players instead of the very elevated charges that they were before for minions. That sucks, but I think it'll balance out in the gear changes. Again, if you have the currency to invest, you're going to be fine. If you are a casual player, minions might not be for you anymore. Minion crit has now been put back on the menu. Minion crit got a buff overall. Lots of crit and crit multi for minions added on trees and items. I'm not going to list it all here. It's in the manifesto. You read it, you know. If you didn't read it, it's there. Basically, they're giving more opportunities, more places for you to get crit and crit multiplier for your minions. Cool. I don't think it's enough for people to be heavily investing unless you also have another source of crit somewhere. Now that the power charges are nerfed, we'll see how it goes. Spirit Offering got a rework. A huge nerf. Fizz's extra chaos was removed completely. That sucks. Spirit Offering was a huge damage buff for any non-brutality minion. That's a lot of damage lost. Spirit Offering was one of the biggest buffs you could give your minions. With 39% Fizz as extra chaos, it's a lot of free damage that you don't have anymore. Now instead, Spirit Offering gives you crit chance and crit multiplier. That sucks. Technically a rework, but that's gonna feel pretty shitty. Unnatural Strength, the Necromancer Ascendancy Notable, instead of it giving +2 to level of all minions, now gives you your minions Unholy Might. Unholy Might is 30% of Fizz as extra chaos. So you lose the +2, but now you can get it on the helmet. So they're moving the power, they're shifting the power out of the tree into the items, which just plays into that. Sucks for casual players, and I think overall is a buff for heavy investors. So minions are not going to be as much of a casual build anymore. You really can't play minions if you can't invest in items anymore. So if you're looking for some casual build, some league starter, minions are probably not for you if you're not a dedicated farming player. Next we have the skill balances. First, the Auric Corpse bug fix. So there was two types of minions, two types of specters that had too much life. When you desecrated them, it gave you they had huge health pools that did way too much damage when they were corpse exploded, and that got removed. So if you were using them to do your Detonate Dead or Volatile Dead before, you lost out on a huge amount of damage there. That does suck, but I also understand GGG wants to bring those outliers in line with other corpses. It would have been nice if maybe those other corpses had been able to move up and meet them somewhere in the middle, but okay, we'll just nerf them down to trash. Overall, corpse life got a huge nerf. So Volatile Dead, those Detonate Dead, Volatile Dead builds are not going to be anywhere near as strong. Someone else did the math for me, so I don't have to. By their math, it's a 60% damage nerf. Ouch. I don't play corpse detonating builds. I haven't done Detonate Dead or Volatile Dead. I did Volatile Dead a long time ago, and it was a breeze. I have not done one recently. I've helped out Buttons with his a little bit. The numbers, once you got up there, felt very good. I don't think you can get even close anymore. That's gonna suck. Overall, Corpse Explosion skills got a slight buff, trying to bring their numbers back up, but it does not equate with how heavily the corpse life was nerfed. Fire Trap got a nerf. It lost about 28% base damage. You're still gonna be fine playing RF Fire Trap. The max damage numbers were off the charts. It'll be a little bit slower, but the point of RF Fire Trap is it's a little bit slower, but it's tanky. So it sucks that you lose some damage, but I think you're gonna be fine. That's a heavy nerf. And I'm surprised that the GG was willing to nerf Fire Trap by 28% when some of these other stuff is like got nothing. Here, we'll look at this RAM. Flamethrower Trap got a 14% buff. Flamethrower Trap has a 0.1% usage rate, and it only got a 14% buff. Fire Trap, which had like a 40% usage rate on the ladder, not total, only got a 28% nerf. Come on. I want to see some big number changes, and none of these are it. Overall, cooldown traps, seismic trap, got nerfed. Not enough. I am not a huge seismic trap mather. There's other content creators who have put out more accurate, more intelligent data on the cooldown trap nerfs to seismic trap. Check them out. Kudos to them for knowing that math. I just don't. I'm not going to give you wrong numbers. But I do know that seismic trap is still strong as shit, and it will be fine. It just won't be out quite as often. Flamethrower trap buff, 14% increase. Not enough. Lightning Spire Trap, 15% increase. Not enough. No one's going to be using either one of them. Still. Explosive Arrow got a slight rework in that now it does more damage with hits, less damage with Ignite. If you were building Ignite, that's a very sizable nerf. If you weren't building Ignite, you get a little buff. Cool. Cast when damage taken gladly got nerfed. Instead of doing 6% more damage, it now does 27% less. That's a kind of a joke when you think about it. People were killing pinnacle bosses in a few seconds with cast when damage taken, and they gave it a 27% nerf, 33% nerf. So now instead of it taking you 3 seconds to kill it, it'll take 4 seconds. Still super strong. We're still going to see ward loopers or another cast when damage taken looping. You'll be fine. A little bit less damage. Take you a little bit longer to kill stuff. You'll be okay. Cast on Death got nerfed. It went from 304% more damage while dead down to 152% more damage while dead. People were one-shotting bosses on 11x worth of gear. Now you're gonna two-shot a boss on 11x worth of gear, or probably still one-shot it. Like it's a nerf, but I don't think it's enough of a nerf to kill the skill. You'll be fine. Divine Blessing got a rework. You can't use it with life tap anymore. Divine Blessing was the one that it gives you an aura at a mana cost instead of a mana reservation. People were using League Life Tap with it so they could reserve all their mana. Pop Divine Blessing, it sucks all their life down, but then they get an extra free aura. Now you can't do that anymore. Oh no, that sucks. But you can still use Val Clarity or Aura Totems or reduce mana cost or just having more mana. That one interaction got nerfed, but it's still fine. It sucks if you were doing that, but if you weren't, yippee. Sniper's Mark got nerfed in that they removed the life and mana flash generation from Sniper's Mark. You lose about 2 base charges per second. That sucks. For that like one guy who was doing that hiltless build that was stacking charges off Sniper's Mark. Everyone else, you won't notice, because you don't run a life flask or a mana flask, so keep at it. Hydrosphere got a... Technically, it's a rework, not a nerf, because it's a bug fix. They changed Hydrosphere so that the 1 hit per second rule is now based on... So that the 1 hit per second rule now applies to everyone, because only the person who cast Hydrosphere can hit Hydrosphere. Way back when, like 2 leagues ago, when anyone could hit Hydrosphere any number of times, no cooldown, it was exploding all the time. So you could chain all of your explosions off Hydrosphere. It was awesome. They nerfed it so it could only be hit once per second, but that once per second was per entity. So if you had a shitload of minions, or if you were in a big party, you were still could hit it over and over and over and over. Now you can't do that anymore. That's solo players who weren't minions will not notice, and those who are kind of abusing that, now you can't do it anymore. Trickster got a rework. We don't know how, but it did. Juggernaut got a rework. The Unbreakable Ascendancy notable was split in 2, one giving also 40% life regen rate, and the other giving 8% of armor applying to elemental damage. That's both pretty strong. 40% increased life regen rate means, you know, you stack up your life regen to 1,000. One notable ascendancy, now it's 1,400. Or if you had even more, like life regen, you can get it up to 3,000-4,000. That gives you 40% increased. That's a lot of life regen for one ascendancy notable. Gonna see some interesting builds popping up with 10,000 life regen per second, stuff like that. It's gonna be pretty cool. 8% of armor applying to elemental damage. That's a very tanky node. Juggernaut just doing Juggernaut things. That's cool. Tawa Chieftain Ascendancy notable got a buff. Now Tawoa's slam goes from 50% to 100% more damage. It's still terrible because it doesn't apply, it's not used by you, so it doesn't apply any of your buffs like Warcry, Fist of War, anything like that. Trash. No one's going to use it anyway. Master Alchemist got a rework. This one was a slight point of contention, it looked like. A few people were saying, oh, awesome, 20% increased magic utility flask effect. That's awesome. And it is. 20% increased effect of your flasks is good. That's, everyone loves their flasks and everyone loves buffing their flasks. However, you still have to spend 4 points to get to Master Alchemist, and they took off the 6% reduced elemental damage taken from in front of Master Alchemist. So the point of taking the node before it, you don't have it anymore. Why would you spend 4 points just to get over to 20% increased effect? It's a very big nerf, very small buff. Additionally, the travel points in Pathfinder give you 5% flask buff effect. Every little node gives you 5% to all flasks, not just magic utility, all flasks. It's like 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Not a great change. For unique balance, the only thing we saw in the manifesto was a nerf to omniscience. Instead of stacking per 10, now it stacks per 15. That's 1% Elipin, 1% Elirez per 15 omniscience. A 50% nerf to its power. I think people are not going to use it. Because, not across the board, but I think we'll see a heavy drop in its usage, because before you put on an Omni, now your build's good. Now you're gonna have to really invest into those stats to get something powerful. Still strong, but it's not best in slot for as many builds anymore. Melding also got a nerf. They added a line that says minus 4% max res, which like kind of sucks. It just means you have to find 4% more res somewhere while you're trying to get to 90. It's a little bit more work, a little bit more investment in your gear. You can still hit 90 or you can still hit 86, which is a huge defensive buff. It's still very strong. Just like the other changes I was saying before, it's a big nerf to poor people and a little annoying for the top tier players. So if you're a casual, screw you. If you're a hardcore farmer, damn, that sucks. Oh well. Like, you'll get over it. You won't even notice by the end of the league. Miscellaneous balance. Brittle. Big nerf. On the top end, you went from 15% crit chance down to 6. Now, brittle is not free max crit chance for everyone. You will have to invest a little bit more. It means that some builds are going to lose their free crit chance, will lose their small amount of damage. Other builds won't notice. If you are investing in crit and using brittle as an aid, you'll be okay. You'll have to get a little bit more crit chance now. You won't get free 100% crit chance. You'll have to work for it. But brittle is still strong. Mana reservation efficiency nerf sucks. We lost a lot of mana reservation efficiency. It's going to be very hard to run as many mana or as many auras anymore. Gonna have to be stacking those small sockets all around the outside of the tree, which means poor people who are farming, you're still good. On hit flasks got a pretty big nerf. The highest tier went from 7 charges per hit down to 3. As someone who used those flasks, it was pretty busted. Like, let's be honest. You got hit a couple times. That flask was just freaking out cycling. With 3 charges, you're still gonna be fine. Especially if you're killing stuff. It's gonna suck if you were depending on these charges for bosses. But you still have the option to run surgeons, get flash charges on crit. It sucks to lose that power of the flask because it finally felt really good. It would have been nice to see that power sucked off the items and put into the Pathfinder Ascendancy, the Flask Ascendancy, instead of Pathfinder being nerfed. No cost while focused. There was a veiled modifier that you could unveil or craft, and you, while focused, your skills cost nothing. That sucks. It's gone. If you never used it before, too bad. You still have Val Clarity. It's the same thing. Just use Val Clarity. Chainbreaker got reworked. This is very interesting. So now, instead of it replacing your mana regen, it works alongside your mana regen. You get 1 rage per second for every 25 mana regen per second you have. So you can get pretty high mana regen per second. So you can get pretty good rage regen. Chainbreaker plus rage on hit. I think we're going to be able to maintain some pretty high rage numbers. I think we're going to see some really long berserks. Very interesting. Damage recouped his life got a buff. Now it rolls on jewels. If you're stacking damage recouped his life, awesome. Now you're going to be able to get a lot more. 6% per jewel. That's a lot. If you weren't, now it's just another stat you have to roll over. Oh well. Here we have skill battles. I want to go through these really fast. Artillery Ballista got a small buff. It's still trash. Blazing Salvo got a very small buff. It was okay, not great. Now it's 12% okayer. Cleave got a buff. It's got a radius increase from 8 to 10. It just shows the philosophy of busted skills get minuscule nerfs while garbage skills get minuscule buffs. Crackling Lance, beam width 18 to 24. That's a 33% bigger beam. Might be useful if you use Echo and it blaps in the exact same spot and the boss is running. You might be able to catch him. Whatever. Decoy Totem, increased life, minuscule buff, who cares? Devouring Totem, minuscule buff, increased life. Devouring Totem, it still counts as leech. Why is it leeching life to you? Either you already are scaling leech and you're hitting your leech cap, or you don't scale leech and this is useless. Change it, please. Energy Blade. Two-handed, goes from 50 to 70% more, minuscule buff, nobody cares. Firestorm, small buff, impact delay from 0.2 to 0.15 seconds. It's a 25% increase of damage for people who are stacking the non-initial hit, not the giant Firestorm, but the little pew-pews. If you are stacking the little pew-pews, it's a buff. Haste is actually a pretty big buff for aura bots. Previously, once you're all stacked up, that attack speed was giving you 25%. Now it's giving you 41% increased attack speed. And the movement speed before was 44% MS. Now it's 66% increased movement speed. Haste, very strong buff for aura bots, not enough for general usage. Reeve, okay, who cares? Tiny bit of buff. You won't even notice it. Rejuve Totem, got a sizable buff. So, using the alternate quality Divergent, which increases its aura effect, you can go up to 380 life regen. So if you have an extra slot, plop down a Rejuve Totem, it can draw trash aggro, and it gives you 380 life regen per second. If you have any sources of increased life regen, that's even more. Very strong. But it's a totem you have to cast, so we'll see. Scorching Ray, small buff, still trash. Scourge Arrow, minuscule buff, still like you won't even notice. Shock Nova, they changed it so it gives you now 10% increased maximum effective shock. So if you can hit that maximum effect of your shock, like if you hit hard enough with lightning, that's very nice. And the ring always shocks. Very nice buff to Shock Nova. Soul Rend. Hit damage got a 23% increase, dot damage got a 23% increase. Big old damage add effectiveness. Soul Rend was already okay, now it might be good. Soul Rend is one of the few on here that got a buff that's like, got a damage buff. Whoa. Spellslinger, small damage buff. Sorta. If you were using the battle mage portion where it adds the wand to the spell, awesome. If not, this doesn't affect you. Sunder, got a buff, minuscule buff. Who cares? The wave speed moves faster. You can level with Sunder now. Woohoo, the meme. Val Flame Blast, pretty sizable. So now the more spell damage per stage is 200% instead of 140%. If you didn't know, Val Flame Blast, you cast it, it contracts, and every 3 stages it explodes. So it pops, contracts, pops, contracts, pops, contracts, pops. Every time it gets smaller, it does more damage. It used to stack, these are more spell damage numbers, 420, 840, 1260, 1680, 2100. Now it stacks 600, 1200, 1800, 2400, 3000. These are pretty big more spell damage numbers. So I would keep an eye on it. I wouldn't say, oh, everyone go Val Flame Blast, but keep an eye on it. Pretty strong. Arrow Nova, small buff if you use Arrow Nova. Urgent Orders, Warcry Speed, small buff if you use Urgent Orders, cool. Critical Strike Affliction exists, in case you didn't know. Small buff. And that's about it. Honestly, guys, the takeaway is frustration a little bit, because they moved so much power into the items that the casual players, the players who don't have enough time, the players who don't have enough knowledge to get progressing in the game as fast as other players or as deeply as other players, it's a huge nerf to them. Because a lot of these builds now require so much investment. We're balancing at the top levels, and everyone else just gets left behind. And I understand that. Like, you don't want those top people trivializing the entire game. But we do need to think about those lower, more casual players. And I think the minion changes across the board really screwed over a lot of those starter builds. You know, in 3.17 and 3.18, you Google starter build, 90% of them were minion, or at least had minion in the list. So that sucks that those are gone now. Also, I touched on the philosophy of the skills that are busted, like just so strong, get minuscule nerfs. And they're still super strong. And then these skills that get no usage rate, that suck, they feel terrible for whatever reason, you know, they feel garbage to play, they're not a good skill, they get minuscule buffs. It's like the power gap is wide, and we bring the top down just a little bit and bring the bottom up just a little bit, nothing changed. We need big sweeping changes, and I'm hoping that tomorrow, when we get more information, and on Thursday when we get more information, we're gonna see, hopefully we'll see something that corrects that. Because this manifesto was very, very anti-hype. As much as I hyped it up, I know I hyped it up a lot more than most people, it still felt pretty shitty. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, check me out on Twitch. I should start going live again. COVID kicked my ass. Thursday we'll be up. Hopefully Wednesday, tomorrow we'll be up too. As always, appreciate you, love you, and stay sane, exiles. I'll catch y'all later.